Hey, look at that. It's Teo Rapp-Olsson. As it so happens, right after I recorded our Dave Reacts, which you should check out on our YouTube channel and actually on our TikTok and Instagram accounts. We were able to actually post the full reaction video since it was under 10 minutes. I had contacted Teo out of the blue just thanking him for portraying Sebastian Milton in such a nuanced and thought-provoking way. Now, I know that a lot of writing is involved in the process that is outside his purview. However, one of the things we spoke about during our interview was how much control he had over the character and how much liberty he had to go back and forth with not only the writers but producers and directors to make his character his own. So after I thanked him, he actually reached out to me the next day and wanted to know what our discussion was going to be like, and I said we were going to be recording later that evening and that maybe he could even pop on. Well, he wasn't able to actually pop on to this episode's discussion. However, he did want to hear how it shook out, and he said, why don't we just jump on a call and talk about how it all went down? This was his idea, and I said, I am totally game. Here's what we decided to talk about. We obviously centered around Sebastian Milton, his role in the show, how it must have felt to keep everything to himself, whether he was satisfied with the end product, and his love and devotion to not only the narrative, but also the fans, people like us. And what was great about it by the end of it was that he said at the end of our discussion that he was going to shout us out during his Instagram takeover. And I kind of went silent at that point because, it was very shocking and jarring. But when it actually happened, I was shaking. I was beside myself. So before we continue playing this conversation, I just wanted to give a hearty thanks to Teo Rapp-Olsson for A, his friendship, B, his support of our podcast. He took over The Walking Dead's Instagram and shouted us out not only once in the stories, but twice. I have no words to properly thank him for doing that. I don't even know if he knows how big of a deal that was for us, how many followers we received on Instagram as a result of that. So just thank you. There's nothing I can do but continue to have you on the show if you'd like to be. And maybe send you some merch. I can do that. And I'll definitely be seeing you at the camp, which is at the end of the month. I hope you all will make it, and you can hang out with Teo and find out exactly why we love him so much and what makes him such an incredible person. So without further ado, here's our discussion on the episode, Sebastian Milton, and much, much more as we get the last word from Teo Rapp-Olsson.
And I'm here with, again, a repeat of Teo Rapp-Olsson. Thank you for joining us yet again with us on a busy Sunday afternoon.
Someday.
Yeah. And we've got, obviously, Cosmov09 and I, Rachel Burt, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster. That's PUNKYBRUISETER.
Wow.
I talk fast, but I can't even do it that fast.
First of all, you're taking over the Instagram account for the AMC The Walking Dead. Second, you'll be on Talking Dead tonight. But I think, was that pre-taped, I think? Or
this one was because a lot of people obviously are jumping over for Comic-Cons, things like that. So we had to get that a little earlier in.
That makes sense.
Okay. When we were speaking at the museum, I felt like you were not going to say anything that was going to give anything away, but I felt like you needed to tell the audience, Sebastian wasn't that bad, or there's something about him that you need to pay attention to in order to fully appreciate this character. I saw a little of that in 11B, and I got to see a whole lot of that in these last two episodes, mostly 11-18. Was there anything you maybe wanted to add as like an addendum to what you probably wanted to say the day of? Like, were there things that you kind of, there must have been part of you that wanted to say more.
Well, first and foremost, as silly as it is, there's kind of a relief to this because I've had to sit on this and not say anything and constantly monitor myself. Like, I didn't say anything, right? That's nothing that Angela's going to call me up and,
the word is graceful.
She's monitoring the Walking Dead like crazy. It's nuts.
She totally is, by the way.
Very terrifying. But no, I thought, it's something that you filmed forever ago, and you don't necessarily know how it's going to be received at all. So, I had intentions behind my portrayal of this character and my choices, but I don't know if that's necessarily what the audience is going to pick up on. And so far, at least from everybody's reactions, it does feel like a lot of that landed the way I was hoping it would, because a big thing for me that I always loved about The Walking Dead, and we talked about this definitely, which was that it is not a black and white show. It's a very moralistically gray space where good guys will do bad things and bad guys will do good things. What I wanted people left with is Sebastian isn't necessarily just this pure evil thing. And while obviously we've seen him be nothing but a little shit most of the time, it's still, we know that there's a person behind that and there's a method to the madness. And maybe there's a world where, given other circumstances, he wouldn't have gone this way, which I think just leads you to have a little bit more, question of like, oh, is this the only choice? When you have to make these snap decisions and everything is normally based on life or death, you don't always get the luxury of making the best decision. You just have to make the quickest decision.
At first, obviously, when we first meet him, it's just all, let's be mean and awful and spoiled and etc. Near the end of 11B, like I said before, you got this glimmer. And oddly enough, the glimmers that we got to see with Sebastian of like, there's something underneath all of this was both scenes were with Max. And what I'm feeling from this, and the more like these episodes kind of marinate with me, 11, 18 more, they're this weird yin-yang foil of each other where you're supposed to like Max, but then you're not sure by the end of the episode. And you're supposed to hate Sebastian. And yet by the end of it, you're like, but I saw that when he was saying what he was saying on the wrestling stage, he's looking right at Max. Is that accurate? He's looking right at Max when he says this. It's like, maybe you're right. Maybe I should lean into this life and do some good with what I know. Yeah. Did you see it that way? And were you hoping that audiences would maybe see it that way?
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. There's a line that she says to him, and I'm going to butcher it now, but basically she's saying like, maybe you're afraid to rise to the occasion because you might fall on your face, but you know that if you don't ever try, nobody's ever going to like think less of you. And I think he takes that to heart because it would be easy for him to just read verbatim off of a script that was clearly written by some, person working in the office and that has no personality to it. But he drops it and speaks truly from the heart and tries something that he could so easily fall on his face. And we see him actually deliver a decent speech. And, we know because when he walks up to the podium or, into the center of the ring, the reception obviously for the audience is not very warm. And by the end, there is applause. There is a sense of like, okay, maybe this is a corner he could turn. And in another world, if somehow Max decided like, maybe let's give him a shot. We don't have to press play. Who knows? Maybe this would have been an opportunity for him to grow into a better person than he has been. But I think the big thing that I kind of also wanted to leave is we just don't know. It also could be that he's like, hey, got away with it. Sweet. Let me go back to being a complete asshole.
Which is probably why she ended up pressing the button or Eugene press the button.
I certainly think that she is justified in that he's done too little too late. The speech that he gives to her, which I absolutely loved, like prepping that, is completely honest and from the heart. And I don't think it's like an evil thing. I think it's just a very pessimistic look. And that's kind of her going like, what good is there worth fighting for if you don't even see how good this could potentially be? The fact that like we have a nation state, we have a place where so many of the people behind these walls don't have to worry about zombies anymore. That's insane. That is unheard of for these people. And you're still looking at it from the like, it's just a cesspool of corruption.
Right.
Like, yeah, but you guys have the ability to not make it that.
And that's going to be the struggle, I think, with these last episodes. It's like seeing that and going, but, and we actually do see the myriad of characters interact with their counterparts, Rosita and Gabriel and Negan and Annie even. And it's like, but, okay. But, So we're struggling with that. We're struggling with, it's good, but is it good enough? Should we strive for better? But if it burns the whole thing down, like Lance says, then what's it worth? This specific episode is almost a microcosm of what we've seen from these characters across 11 seasons. Let's take Negan and the Saviors, the all-out war storyline. Rick is constantly fighting back, expecting better. Now, he could have probably, and he did eventually when he was beaten to submission, continue servicing the Saviors, and things might have been okay. Maybe they could have built on top of that relationship. Maybe it didn't have to be about fear. You never know. But at the same time, he kept hitting back. People got killed because of it, one by one. The whole junkyard gang. So what's it worth if we're literally burning our people down, right? So this is kind of like a small microcosm first world problems version of that, like in a sense, because it can easily turn to third world. But are we in a better place or are we not in a better place? This is one of those things I think that's going to be revealed, right?
Yeah. Well, there's also the question of, is it worth, I mean, you were getting at this, but is it worth fighting for that better place? Knowing that there's already problems here, is it worth just running away from them and trying to restart somewhere else? And that's kind of what we see with Daryl and Judith when she's talking about, like, why do you want to run away from this? Like, this is the closest thing we've had to normal. I think it's worth fighting for rather than leaving it to go back to Alexandria or, Hilltop or any of these kind of places, which are like on their last legs to begin with.
It reminds me of that conversation that we saw between John Dory and Virginia. People want to feel safe, but actually making them safe is better. Are the people in the Commonwealth actually safe, or do they just want to feel safe? And what's actually being provided for these residents?
Which is to say, is Sebastian 100% right? He says it out loud. He says everything that is wrong with the Commonwealth out loud.
It's just crazy, like how many times The Walking Dead has given us these characters that we think we know how they are, who they are, and they're this way, and then all of a sudden we see this different side to them, and we're like, maybe they could be something else, and then they kill them off, and it's like, this character could have been so much more, and as a comic book reader. Especially, I think I have Sebastian all figured out, right? Like, I know who he is because I read about him in the books. But you can make him something completely different, and it sucks now that we don't get to see this potential that he could have had.
Dante,
Dante, another example, exactly.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, though, Rachel, and for Teo, for you to describe the situation as you did, because Dave and I came back from the interview with you initially and watching these 2 episodes, and we were kind of like, do we feel this way now about Sebastian because we met Teo and we really like him? He's like super nice. Is that why has this like skewed our view? This is like horrible journalism. We're like bad as journalists, right?
I immediately answered yes. Yes, it is. The $400,000 he gave each of us really didn't help the situation. It's really not good for journalism.
Have you seen where I'm living right now?
Bribe.
It's getting hard out here, folks. Yeah. It's a Navajo blanket and a daybed.
Again, I really do think there is something to that of like leaving people wondering, like, is there another course this could have taken? And I think we've seen that so many occasions, time and time again. And that's something that we see in both the comics and the show. They just choose to do it in different ways. I myself, having read the comics, having like an idea of like, okay, based on what I've read, what are we going to do in this universe? You as the actor don't know until like you get these scripts. So it's not like, I'm sitting there from day one knowing that this is going to happen. I'm kind of piecing this together as we're going along until I read 11/18. And obviously it took me for a surprise as well. But the one thing that I did think about, and I don't know, kind of at least resonated for me, was that I think the TV show from a very early point has always made it clear that it isn't going to follow the comics exactly. We see that with things like Sophia's death in season 2. Carol obviously outlives her comic book
surviving.
self. Yeah, obviously different ways in which they do this. But then there's even things like one of my favorite things, and I know it's for a lot of fans of the show, it's a huge point of contention, but Glenn's death, I think from how they handle it from the comics, is actually one of my favorite parts, because we show Abraham, we think, okay, we're not following the comics, and then psych, we're actually doing it exactly the way we're doing in the comics. And again, I know it comes with the critical issue of like, once actors take over these parts, they do become different than their comic book selves. And obviously, me personally, I love Steve Ewan's work in that. I think he is unbelievable. But I think there's just those kind of moments that we've seen this show time and time again, is that like, we're not going to follow the comics to a T. And therefore, for comic book readers, we're gonna throw you wrenches in where you think this is going, and it's gonna leave you on your toes, because it would be easy to watch any movies based off of books and be like, okay, I know we're at this scene now, we're at this scene now, we're at this scene now, and it's nice. But I do think there is something in a world where you see versions of the same like intellectual property being turned into TVs or movies or anything else, showing that they're not the exact like mirrored image of the previous version. Because if you want that, go read it.
Otherwise, like, I'm just going to sit there knowing exactly what's going to happen. There's not going to be any new development that I'm not going to get as invested as I currently am in this specific franchise.
I think that's like, it is a testament to the comics being as good as they are, that like I would push anybody who's a big fan of the show, if they have the time, read those comics. I was fortunate enough that when I got this job, I was like, you know what, I want to consume as much of this, because when it's so rare that as an actor you get the opportunity to be part of something that already has like a saga, a compendium of material. And so I just, I was like, I want to go out and consume all of this. And reading through it, I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, there are sections of those comics that I'm like always like, oh man, that would have been an incredible episode if we got to see that, or this, or these kind of things. And I understand why we didn't do those things, but it only like lends more credence to wanting people to therefore, if they follow something, be like, okay, then go find the original source and go check that out too. It's amazing.
Since we are talking about the comics, I want to bring up something that I know you've spoken to someone else about, but I'm curious to hear for myself. You know Sebastian's trajectory in the comic books and the incredible role he plays at the end there. So unfortunately, we're not going to get to see that play out. We, up until now, have been wildly speculating about
as to who
would take the role of Rick.
Episodes upon episodes.
Oh my gosh, just all kinds of theories. Who's Sebastian going to kill? Who's it going to be? Who's taking on this role? Fortunately, I'm not sure where I sit on this just yet. But fortunately, we're not going to see that play out. So, Teo, who do you think would have or should have taken on that role of Rick? Who would Sebastian have taken out eventually?
My two that I was thinking a lot about would have been Aaron or Ezekiel. I don't necessarily get a lot of interaction with them, but I think in terms of their character and what they mean to the group and the community is very diametrically opposed to what Sebastian gets at. And I think it would have just been a very fun reason for him to be like, well, you're in my way and a problem with what I see, and therefore untimely death. Plus, obviously, I would just love to receive the ire and hate of all these fans. So, that's another reason.
And then they meet you and they're like, well, I can't hate you. So actually,
you'd be surprised.
Really? No, I would be actually, but
no, I've said this before, but I've received literally no
right
feedback to this point. Knock on all the wood. But
awesome.
So far it's been very,
really
very
incredible.
nice and
all the wood.
I've been,
Well, we've always pushed for, hate the character, not the actor. They are not the same people. And if you do hate the character that much, that's just a testament to the talent that these actors have.
I talked with some of the cast members, because obviously some people have not been fortunate enough in that department. People are very much like, get prepared on like social media. You will get some amount of flack, which, unfortunately for some of those people, that's based on real experience. And I completely agree with that message, because it's also just that there's so many variables that go into this, from the script to the way it got edited to the direction that the story takes over before the actor ever gets involved, let alone what they bring to it as well. That if you're hating any one piece, I guarantee you that's got the hands of so many people on it. And obviously at the end of the day, it's one person's face behind it. But there's so many people that came to the bat and made this character along with me when it comes to Sebastian, and the same for any of those other characters.
We spoke about who Sebastian would have killed had the storyline proceeded like the comics, but what I really want to know from you is what do you think would have happened with Sebastian had Maxine not pushed the button?
That's a great question. I mean, it was something I kind of thought about, especially in like more broader strokes, obviously not like what tomorrow looks like or anything. Right. But I think like had everything gone according to plan, let's say, somehow they still had the grandfather recording and played that instead, I think there's a world where he would have probably at least walked up to her and said the closest thing he can say to thank you, even if it isn't him saying directly thank you, might be like good advice. Because the thing that always struck me in reading it is a big thing I look out for is both what your character does and what your character doesn't do. What I mean by that is when she says to him, like, or you can stop being like an asshole and giving me a life lesson, I so easily could be like, do you know who you're talking to? Like, you can't say that to me. Like, guards, get her. Like, execute her. There's so many ways in which I could punish her for talking to me like that. But instead, I just listen to her. And then I go and implement her talking to into action. And so there is an element that I think he was at least going like, okay, maybe I can do better than I've given myself credit for. Because at the end of the day, I think a big part is that like Sebastian knows he will never be his mother, for better and for worse. He does not have her abilities. You're talking about a genius, a top tier level of like Machiavellian strategy, of just, how to wait and plan something that maybe with time he could get closer to that. Because I think he's plenty smart, but he's still a kid relative to her. And more than anything, one of his biggest weaknesses is his impetuousness. He doesn't always take the time to think. And that's something that Pamela is so good at. And so I think there's just a level of like, I'm never going to be able to reach that. So why do it? Like, why even strive? And then this is the first time that somebody says something and it's like, okay, maybe let's go for it and fall flat on my face, but let's at least say I tried.
I would argue Pamela herself was kind of thrust into this position after living a life of philanthropy. So in a sense, she ended up doing what you kind of said in your speech, which was, hey, I'm not going to give you a dumb speech. Well, and she ends up giving speeches throughout her career anyway.
Yeah.
She ends up carrying President Milton's philosophy throughout without really altering it or changing it up in her own way.
Yeah.
So as smart as she is, she always seems to lean heavily on President Milton's original philosophy, original idea of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
But if I may, I feel like Sebastian giving it his old college try had Maxine not pushed the button. Yeah, maybe it would have fallen flat on its face. But given what he says to Maxine, I feel like he would at least try to address some of the bullshit because it disgusts him.
Yeah.
And so he would actually bring something new to the table.
Well, I mean, a big thing that, like, with that speech that he gives to her that she records is that he's seen how the sausage gets made. And he's seen that for his whole life, really, or at least, a significant portion of it. And so there's no romanticization of, like, what a democracy looks like for him. He knows that the names get picked out for the lottery. It's like none of this has ever been upward mobility. And what she's saying is like, yeah, but it could be. And there's a certain level of him, I think, for the first time going like, oh, right, it could be. And guess who's going to be next in line? This guy.
Sebastian, of course, mentions a brother. And if it does end up being mentioned on the show, whatever, don't say anything about it. But do you have any idea what that backstory might have been?
This is a cool thing, but like a lot of times the show will give you a lot of leeway and license. They didn't really like approach us to be like, this is what we're thinking with that. This is what we want from it. What I can just speak to is that like Lila, who plays my mom, obviously just an amazing actor and a really smart one who dissects these scripts on a level I only dream of someday being able to do, but also is just a very, an actor who wants to work very closely in tandem with others. So she and I talked a lot about what the dynamic of our family must have been like over the different periods of time. And so we have a lot of like personal background story, but it's not something that I personally, as Sebastian, get the opportunity to delve into. But it is something that informs a lot of this character.
Another layer, an onion layer to this narrative.
Sharon has a couple of questions that are coming in from Discord. Ultimately, do you think Sebastian deserved this ending? And also, what have you learned from playing this role?
Ooh, those are good questions. I think it's tough because we don't live in a world where we have the luxury of time for, lessons to be learned and had. And there's a certain level of like, we need to fix this community now. And he did some deplorable things. I mean, at the end of the day, some 40 people directly died from his actions and probably countless more through other actions that we don't delve into. So yeah, it's sad because I think, in a better world and society, especially one that Rick has talked about, because you look at like Rick keeping Negan alive is out of, we need to get back to a world of forgiveness. We need to build penance into our societies. So in a more closer to the utopian version, I think, yeah, he should have a chance to survive, but unfortunately we're not at that place where that can be allowed. In terms of what I learned from playing this character, a big thing, honestly, was a lot about trusting my gut and myself, because this isn't like a lot of roles where I'm going to come into like, let's say a TV show playing a character that has been freshly written. Nobody has any preconceived notions because nobody knew about this character until they came onto the screen for the first time. This is a character where people have had years of preconceived notions, have had ideas of who should play this guy, of what he should be like, of all these kind of things. So to step into that is a little jarring, because that people are going to come at this with like, well, this is my idea, and is it even close to what I think of this? And I've mentioned this before, but like, while I wasn't originally somebody who had consumed all the comics or anything like that, I am a huge fan of universes and lore. Things like Star Wars is one of my favorite things. And obviously when a new part of that universe gets delved into, I always have opinions on it. And I always try to come at it from a constructive place, but still, I can have positive and negative opinions about these things. So there was a level before this ever came out that I had to kind of say to myself, like, I'm putting my stamp of approval on this. Even if this gets dogged by all the fans and they're like, that's not what Sebastian's supposed to be like, I can say, you know what? I did my research. I did my homework. These are the reasons that I made him who he was. This was not just I had 2 seconds of the script and I just, winged it. I actually put some time and effort into this, and this is why I think Sebastian is this character. And again, you can disagree with me, but I have to know for myself I think this is a strong portrayal of this character.
I think you did an excellent job
Agreed.
portraying Sebastian, honestly.
Thank you. Seriously.
Like I said, as a comic book reader, I think you portrayed him perfectly.
That genuinely means the world, and that was, I mean, the biggest. No, but seriously, the biggest hope was that fans would be on board, just because, again, as a fan of lore and universes, that's what I would want, is to know that the people who come into those universes that I love so dearly treat it with that kind of respect and reverence.
Now that we've seen you in the part, I don't know that any of us could picture anybody else doing it. It just seems like it was
Very
meant
true.
for you. Seriously, you did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, you broke the mold of what we thought.
the mold.
I mean, in a similar fashion to, let's say, Jeffrey Dean Morgan breaking what was previously the mold.
For sure.
Yes.
Henry Rollins type character that could have been Negan. Was directly modeled after Henry Rollins. So sort of, yeah.
But yeah. No, but I mean, yeah, JDM is so incredible at that part. And has just given it a life of its own, separate from the comics, but in such a perfect tandomness to the comics.
So I think that's a very accurate comparison, I think, embodying a character that we didn't know could be that.
Let's just end this here. It's not going to get better. Great.
We could,
I mean, we could talk about the scene itself, right? This last Sebastian scene.
As an effects artist myself, I would love to hear the nitty gritty of everything that went into that.
Awesome. Yeah. No,
how giddy were you?
I was quite giddy. I mean, seriously, there was the first read was like, wow, I can't believe this is coming to an end. This is so sad. And then rereading it, I was like, wait, this is going to be an awesome way to go. This is pretty sick.
You get a whole crowd.
Whole crowd, but also just, gruesome evisceration by a zombie. Some people get popped in the head and that's that. And stuff like that. I'm not poo-pooing getting shot in the head on a show like this, but it's a very quick thing. This is you get to do the whole 9 yards. You're in a VFX trailer for, I quote this because it's the exact amount of time it takes, but one Austin Powers worth of a movie. And I know that because that's what we watched when they were putting on the VFX. Which coincidentally is a great movie to watch in a VFX trailer, as everyone is seeing Dr. Evil or Fat Bastard and be like, oh yeah, they use that kind of material to make that fat fold. Yep, that's what they do. And you're like, wow, this is very weird to be around savants of this exact industry. Then putting in all this effort before you ever get to set, and it's a high stakes moment because you really have one opportunity at this, because no matter the budget on a show like this, it takes an hour and a half or so to put that stuff on. If we needed to go again, it's going to take an hour and a half to re-strip all that off, clean me completely off, wait for me to dry, reattach all that stuff, and do it again. That would be another day. And I can't even imagine what that would cost us, budget-wise to do. I remember when we sat down and this entire group of people is around us kind of pointing out okay, this is where you gotta hit it right here, because this is where we have a plate and where we have all the things that are going to burst out with blood and stuff. And if we don't get this in this take, let's not even talk about that. Let's just get it in this take, kind of a thing. Yeah. And so then a lot of the work is done for you. When you're looking down and blood is trickling down you look behind you and there's a very lifelike zombie. So all of the guttural screaming and stuff, it actually becomes kind of easy to do, because you're yep, this is probably without having to experience the real thing, I'm imagining this is pretty close to it.
I am personally terrified of getting this wrong.
Right.
And something that always drew me to on-camera work, and literally from thesis films when I was in college, is that camera feels like a team sport, in that my job as the actor, it doesn't matter if the sound is bad, if the guy racking the focus didn't get the focus right, if the VFX department didn't get that neck exactly the way it's supposed to look. I mean, all of that is for naught. So it doesn't matter that I do my job if some other department didn't. And by that same token, knowing that each of these departments has already risen to the occasion kind of leaves you in a position of okay, well, now it's my turn as well. It does feel okay, we're all lifting this together, and therefore, when it comes time, I don't know, there's an excitement of all right, you've passed me the ball, now it's my turn to either pass it on or go for the shot. And I love that kind of aspect of it. And to do it with something like VFX is so cool, because it just adds one more layer that you're not always fortunate enough to get to play with.
It's like seeing all the dominoes racked up just right and making sure they tumble and hit each mark, essentially. So that's basically what you're describing. And watching it all unfold, each person doing their part so expertly, it's just so satisfying.
Well, and especially with film, it's if they've done it really well, you didn't even know they were there. You're just caught up in the moment of the show. I'm sitting there watching and be oh man, I remember exactly where Greg was on set when he was pumping blood into that neck to shoot it up. But it's once we go for the real thing, all that fades, and now we have the end product that we can be left with, that we're just sucked into the universe again.
I know that when things are filmed, they're not always filmed obviously from the same vantage point too, but was there that crowd all around you while that was happening? Were they there, and did that actually help your performance?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Well, because there's the sense of like, why aren't you guys helping? Like, what the hell? And it is a rare death in this universe that there are so many people around you and nobody is doing anything. And just the fact of being so alone in such a populated area is such a jarring, juxtaposition. And that, again, it does speak to like, it's a little too late. He's already had these deplorable actions, and all these people, they just finished protesting. People had signs about what a bad person he is, that, it doesn't matter that he maybe was on the right path. At the point that this happened, it was already, all the terrible things had happened, and they were already too fresh in the minds of the citizens. And so, there is a sense of just like, man, this is bittersweet. I could have so easily been saved, but my own actions led to my downfall.
The balance was passed.
A lot of these people, a lot of these people have spent so many years behind the walls too. They wouldn't even know what to do either, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this has got to be a shock to see something like this for them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, many of these people probably have, if they've ever confronted one, it's been forever since they've had to, because they got that luxury where they don't have to do that anymore. And that's obviously amazing. But in a world where that still exists, you're kind of lying to yourself to some degree.
Right. Oh, Sebastian is acutely aware
at some point, instinct would take over. And you personally, I feel, if I see somebody being attacked or wronged, like my instinct is to go in and help. Doesn't matter who they are. But these people just sort of stand around and they're like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a zombie attacking them, I'd like to think I'm with you that I would do something, but I don't know. I'm not. I remember telling my girlfriend at one point, I was like, look, if a witch or something is attacking you, I'm running in the other direction. Like, I love you. There's a robber in the house. I would like to think I'm going to be like, hey, take the stuff and let us be safe. But if it's a witch, no, I'm completely out. You're on your own. Each person for themselves.
Magical powers, I can't deal with that.
Exactly. It's not my job. What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
I don't have the skill set.
No. And also, again, I told you from day one, you can't put that on me. It's not like you're like, oh, wow, Teo really, dropped the ball. No, I said I would drop the ball. So this was far for the course.
It's going to be in the prenup.
What would happen.
Exactly. I have that in a long document.
Girlfriend contract.
Yeah,
will not save you in event
Chicks
of a
dig contract. Chicks dig contract. Let me tell
She's
you.
still here, so that's on her.
Shockingly.
Well, that's how you know you picked a winner, right? So, the contract she signed, she's like, whatever.
Agreed to the terms. Oh my gosh.
I have the same thing.
Good. Yeah, it's important.
We can safely end it right there. I mean, Teo's got to add the new photo for the Instagram, I think.
I know. Got to run back through that.
You get a screenshot of this and add it.
I was going to say, I did do one little video. I was going to post you guys in it if that's why. I assume that's cool.
I love that.
Cool.
I'll put
Very cool.
Walking Dead in there.
Thank
so
you.
Will be,
thank you.
As well, of course.
Oh, my goodness.
Of course.
My heart just went.
Thank you.
My heart just went.
No,
I went
so appreciative of the fan base and the community, and we've talked about it so many times, but not every show does it actually feel like it's a family. And the fact that I've built lasting relationships with people that are fans of this is just such a testament to the base that, of course, I would want to post about you guys, because this is such a cool thing that you guys are nurturing here, and I'm just happy to be in any small part, be a part of it.
Oh,
well,
and
thank you.
Likewise, you simply add to what we are trying to do, and
I'm not crying. You're crying.
Oh no, I'll cry later. It's fine. But the way you talk about the show itself supplements really nicely what we try to do on a weekly basis. Let's say we really go into the content, the narrative, pick it apart. We all talk about how it makes us feel. Minds get changed in the process, which is really amazing, and that's you. And this is not the average compliment. This is more like, oh, you did a great job. No, you really are into it the way we are as a podcast, and by extension, when you're with the fans, you're you, and we're happy that you're just as big a fan as we are. And I'm very grateful to have had this first of all, being able to speak with you on Facebook has been great. And also to have spent some time with you, get to know you, and to really sit down and really dig into what we both love. And I think I thank you very much for taking the time out.
Seriously, that means the world, guys. Thank you so much. And I only look forward to more of these kind of occasions. Good luck with everything you guys are doing. I'm such a fan, and I can't wait for us to all, get to experience the last of this awesome show together.
Yeah, and we'll see you in a couple weeks, actually.
I know.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
We are Squawking Dead, a podcast pulverizing episodes of the Walking Dead universe. Sometimes we give you news, sometimes we make you laugh, but most times we go deep. I'm your host, David Cameo, and I'm joined by CosmoMom09, Rachel Burt, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/Bunky Brewster. That's PUNKYBRUISETER. And today we're going to talk about The Walking Dead's third trimester premiere, along
I like
with
that much better. Thank you for not saying the other thing.
the second episode in the 8-ep final episode. Sorry.
You were doing so well.
I know. I just couldn't stick the landing on the second one. So, yes, the third trimester premiere plus 11/18. So 11/17, 11/18, that would be Lockdown and A New Deal. We have a lot to unpack here. We chose to do 2 episodes at once because the danger in not doing so would mean that these episodes wouldn't come out at a decent schedule or a decent clip. The Walking Dead decided to, or AMC decided to, drop the first 2 episodes all at once the day of the premiere, which I'm actually not mad at. Look, as much as I would be selfishly requesting that we get these episodes early, I am happy that they are listening to fans who say, please don't drop the third trimester premiere, which nobody calls it the third trimester premiere. We like to call it the third trimester premiere because it's like a pregnant baby. And I like to think of the beginning of something rather than the end of something, to be fair to Rachel.
It's birthing it's birthing triplets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Their names are Negan, Maggie, Daryl, and Rick and Michonne.
There's 5 of them.
It's the triplets
They're
or the
coupling
shows,
up, I suppose.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's more like Gremlins. You feed the one
Yes.
and 2 pop out. So
It's Neggy. The shows are Neggy,
Daryl, and
Michonne.
Michonne.
right.
Daryl, Neggy, and Michonne. Those are the triplets.
Sorry,
Those are the
Carol.
triplets.
You know, I'm relishing in the fact that there's so many people who are still holding on to hate for Daryl. For Norman Reedus, but Daryl Dixon, because Carol couldn't be on the series, even though Melissa McBride herself was like, I need a break. Bye. What? Why are you hating on Norman? Because they're conspiracy theorists. I hate to put it that way.
That means I need to hit up Twitter to look to see what's being said because it was amazing.
Only if it's funny. Yeah, only if it's funny will I go over there.
Stupid and hilarious, and I loved it.
But you know what it is? It's it's funny at first because you're like, okay, have a moment. It's fine. Everybody is entitled to have a moment. I'll say this, it's really only on the margins. You have the diehard Carol fans, actually, Caryl, the Carol and Daryl shippers, that have broken. They're just, they're not okay. And so now it's more like, okay, and you know what? I leave them to their devices. It's I see it and I'm like, okay, you've chosen your path. This is where we part ways. Yeah, it's all right. Because I don't want people to think I make fun of them, and I don't. I take them actually kind of seriously. I really
fun
do.
Of everyone.
I take them kind of seriously. I don't judge people. I try not to judge people, but and because everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I just feel like where we really part ways and where I really start getting judgy is when it's and this is really ubiquitous. But when you're choosing to hate on, let's say, AMC, Norman Reedus, even Melissa McBride, which I've seen no hate towards her at all, which you'd think because she left, people be more hateful towards her. But the conspiracy theory is that she was pushed off the show because of things that Norman Reedus says like, fuck that bitch, I don't want to work with her, or something, or like AMC.
There's like this whole theory about how like Norman actually hates Melissa, and like it's ridiculous.
Norman's girlfriend made them take Melissa off the show because she was jealous of them, because Norman and Melissa should be together, and
it's disgusting. People are nuts. They're so crazy.
Yeah. So it's very, very similar to when, and I'm going to say this, and this is not what I think, this is what has been said. Sharony, just brace yourself. It's similar to when Jenna cracked a dumb joke about like Madison's exit. Something to like, who was the other blonde girl on the show? Like, I mean, it was like an actor to actor jab, but that everybody on the Fear the Walking Dead watchers from 1 to 3 like took very seriously. And like, it's just like the actors don't give a shit. Kim Dickens doesn't give a shit. Kim Dickens probably thought it was super funny, but people they take these little nuggets and they spin yarns on it. Like, oh, there's a rivalry behind the scenes. Go. So enough about that noise. We're here to talk about The Walking Dead, right? I can feel you. I can feel your judgy presence on me right now for taking too much time for this shit. Where we start is going to be very difficult, because I think the first thing we need to do is catch everybody up to why we are where we are. That it may be necessary to recap a little bit of what we've seen so far. Obviously, you can go back to our episodes to watch what we've seen so far, but it is actually a good idea to go on a more of like a top-down view of what's happened. And I think it really kind of all starts from when Lance decides to go out on his NGO mission to the what do we call them? The tenant dwellers. I forget what they were called. This is
the tower. It's not really the tower, because that was the thing in Fear season 7.
And there was also the thing in 11:15.
We called it Jericho at one point, because we talked about the walls of Jericho.
Good call. So I forgot about that. And I've got some like Bible stuff in my notes for today, but yeah, we'll call it Jericho for now. I forgot the leader, what his name was. He was mentioned in this episode too.
Yeah, Annie mentioned it.
Ian. Your accent made me remember. It's Ian. Oh, okay, got it. So they go on this mission, and the mission is a ruse. What was the whole point of that mission is really my question. It was more like Lance wanting to catch Aaron and Gabe and make them cause some sort of incident between these people.
They thought that those were the people that had taken his shipment, his convoy. So they went there to try to find where the convoy stuff was, and Aaron and Gabe were there to be honest, I don't remember why they were there. To
be a peaceful fact-finding, let's bring people into the Commonwealth sort of thing.
They were trying to show them like how they would go about doing that, so that Aaron could essentially end up being one of the people that goes out and like scouts out new territories and stuff.
And to make alliances and to have trade and
which is
what
Aaron used to do for Alexandria.
Right, which Lance claimed he was trying to do when he was talking to Maggie. But it turns out who was hitting up the convoys but Leah. Like, I lost my people. Let's hit these convoys up and destroy people. And then Lance finds her, and it's this complete misunderstanding that Lance, of course, tries to make lemons into lemonade, that sort of thing. It's like, this can still work. Like, we can still blame these people, and we could blame these new people, Gabe and Aaron and all them, because now they're turncoats because they didn't follow my plan and killed what's-his-face.
Toby Carlson was
Toby Carlson. Yeah. Right, because it turned into a disaster. But Lemons to Lemonade Lance, it thinks he can make everything, divert everything, look kind of like Morgan, I guess, in a weird way. He can redirect, make it work for him. And it just keeps escalating. It's kind of like what we're talking about Saul Goodman, oddly enough. Like, he was on his haunches, and he kept pushing and pushing and pushing until like let's kill them all, because this just does not work. And when we have somebody, we have to blame somebody. And so it's a pretty big mess that we're coming into on 11/17, and Lance needs something to show for it. After Leah dies, after his Lemons into Lemonade dies, Maggie not wanting to join the Commonwealth, that's another bonus. That's another reason why he's got to kill these people so we could just take this shit over. And I've got to have a win. And Pamela warned him that if you keep going, it's not always going to go your way.
Yeah, that kind of sums it all up. There's not much beyond that.
On that note, so we can pivot, Aiden has a take that we should all listen to.
Hey, this is my take for 11/17. in honor of Sebastian, I am hiding in my closet. What was your thoughts on the scene between Daryl and Maggie where they talk about Leah and Glenn? Where Daryl kind of alludes to the fact that maybe one of the reasons he was so easy to kill Leah is obviously because of his long history with Maggie, as well as him feeling responsible for the death of Glenn. Still, I kind of find it weird that we don't really get to hear a lot about Daryl and Leah's relationship. I think because 11B was told tons of time skips, and because her debut episode, Find Me, was told in a bunch of time skips, we really don't see how major their relationship is. But we know Maggie obviously knew about their relationship. We know Aaron and Gabriel knew something about it. In 11/16, they talk about it. Were you satisfied with that conclusion to that? Are we going to get more? What do you think?
Let's settle this. At the risk of obviously reopening wounds when we were talking about it, I think we all might agree that it felt a little weird that, like, you introduced a character that I thought was actually pretty developed, contrary to Aiden. Fairly developed enough for us to give a shit about how she died. But, like, I felt like her dying felt a little flat. Like, for all the development that she had, whoa, a thud. Well, does Maggie bringing it up what Daryl did for her to save her life? Obviously, he was going to do that. We all agree to that. But does her bringing it up resolve it a little bit better for you?
No. One of our big complaints at the end of the last of 11B was that he just killed her and there was nothing else to it. Like, nothing else was said, and they just had this character that they built up, and then all of a sudden they're just like, okay, she's dead. We're not going to say or do anything else about it. And we were saying, well, maybe they'll address it in 11C. You know, they'll take care of it. They'll address it. Well, I'm going to say that this is the last we're going to hear about it. This was their covering of Leah. Is Daryl's emotions supposed to be limited to what he feels about Maggie and Glenn? Daryl, you can have emotions about killing someone that you cared about apart from feeling like you always have to be on Maggie, do something for Maggie because Glenn would want you to. It's been 12 years. You have made up for it over and over and over again. Please stop using that as a defense to not care about anything and not have emotions. I'm really, really upset that that's all they're going to address about Leah. She's never going to be mentioned again. They're never going to address Daryl's feelings. They're just going to sweep it under the rug and be done with it.
Well, I think that, yeah, they probably won't mention Leah directly again. I have some feelings and theories about this. Yes, I think it's fair for Daryl to still feel bad about Glenn. He was close to Glenn. Glenn was with him from the beginning. So I get why he would feel really totally shitty about that. He wants to make it up to Maggie because Maggie was pregnant at the time and they were going to have this baby and there was all this excitement for the future. On top of that, Daryl would have had to have mourned Leah in a way a couple times before he killed her. She left, and you have to mourn that loss then when she leaves, because you're in the apocalypse. You're probably never going to see her again. You see her again, and she turns against you. So you're then mourning her, saying like, well, I guess we can't make it work because she's going to choose her family. I'm going to choose mine. And so he mourns her a second time. Like, I'm not saying like he wouldn't be upset about it. Of course he would, but he's also Daryl, so he's not going to like showcase those emotions super readily. I'm not happy that they didn't give like a little bit more. I wanted a little bit more, like we saw back before they got to Alexandria when he finds the barn during the hurricane back in season five. So I wish we had gotten more of that, because there was some vulnerability that we got to finally see out of Daryl, and I would have liked to have seen that again to showcase that he is growing as a person and not just stagnant, because that's not good writing. But despite the mourning several times and despite everything else, I think that there is going to be some sort of, I'm going to say, an emotional revolution for Daryl. This is my hope, okay? Because there was that moment where he clearly wanted to say, like, we should stay and help these people in the Commonwealth. It looks like they're on like a loading dock.
Right, the beginning of 11/18, essentially.
Yeah, it's Maggie and Daryl's there and Zeke is there.
If I'm not mistaken. I know the apple was there. That was an interesting allusion.
Anyway, there's people there, right? And they're talking.
people there.
There's people there. I don't remember exactly, so
Carol.
I'm tired. Yeah, they're talking about leaving, and they're saying like, well, what are we going to do? We're just going to go back and like just be how we were before. And you could tell that there was like this moment of, I want to say no. But Maggie was like, yeah, we should go home. And he looks at her. There's this moment where he pauses and he looks at her. And so to me, that was saying like, okay, that's what you want. And I'm going to do what I need to for you because my job is to protect you. And so you're saying that this is what makes you feel safe. So I'm just going to go along with it. And so I think it's going to hit a point where like too much has happened. And he's going to be like, I can't keep doing this. Now I would
can't
hope
just be about Glenn is what you're saying.
not that it can't just be about Glenn, but that it can't be, he can't just keep blaming himself all of the time for the rest of his life.
Right.
So I
He has a
hope
kid
that we
now.
I hope that we see that growth. I really, really, really do. Because one, if this were a real person, I would want them to have more in their life. This is sad. Glenn died and it was horrific, and like you can feel bad about it and feel like it was totally your fault, but Glenn wouldn't want you to not live. That's like not the kind of person he was. He like found joy in such small things. You know, he took the joy out of anything that he could find. He wanted to relish in that. So like for Daryl to become this walking dead, this like zombie of a person is so sad to me. So like I'm hoping that there's some sort of deeper arc there that we just can't see, because we saw some moments of real near defiance out of Daryl. So I'm hoping that we can really see that. I liked that the beginning scenes focused so much on him, those flashbacks.
In 11 to 18, yeah.
There's a little bit in 17 too.
Yes, that's
so
true.
So because they're doing that each episode. And I don't know if they'll do that for every episode. It would be kind of cool if they did.
It's fucking me up.
It's
sounds
beautiful.
Like they are, though.
It's beautiful.
They are going to be doing it.
It's beautiful. It's super emotional. It's smart if you're trying to get people like invested emotionally in these last 8 episodes.
As if we weren't already.
Well, maybe return viewers need that.
Fair enough.
I can agree with what you're saying, but if having to kill the first woman that he ever really loved doesn't bring that fucking arc out in him, then what is going to? What is going to fucking bring that change if not having to kill Leah?
I do have something to say that pairs very nicely to both your comments, because as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, why the rage, bruh, at Lance Hornsby? It took barely Carol to get him off of Lance. I'm forced to kind of argue with the fact that, like, you brought this. We could have been okay. Maybe even Leah and I could have been okay. He doesn't know. I mean, he doesn't know the deal they made, et cetera, et cetera. There was a part of me that thought, this isn't just about attacking Maggie and her kid. This isn't just about raising hell and Lance trying to grab whatever he could. This is also about Leah. He knew that Lance had something to do with Leah, period. If not for him, he may not have had to kill the only woman that he loved too. That knife to the hand was like, you're not getting away with having done all of this. So I feel like there is a bit of Leah in that stabby stab to the hand, because I had to reckon a little bit with that, because part of me didn't feel okay with what he did. It feels good for us to watch him do that to Lance Hornsby, right? Like ostensibly, but there has to be like something more to that for it to make sense to me. And it's everything. It's the promise to keep Maggie safe, but it's also for himself too. The reason why I say this is paired very nicely with what Mercer has had to witness over the last couple of episodes. People not doing their jobs, which makes it so that the hordes can pass up to 3 outer checkpoints, having to see his men mutilated before his very eyes, him having this heart-to-heart with Max in the second trimester, the latter episodes, having this very interesting ideological conflict that is bearing fruit in these episodes, mostly 11-18, where he's like, you can't just burn it all down, Max, because if you burn it all down, we may never get whatever this is back up again. And Max is going like, no, we got to burn it down or else we can't live our lives. Like, but Max, you haven't seen what I've seen, what me and my men have seen. And now Mercer's worst nightmares are coming true. So I feel like whatever Daryl is going through, Mercer is going through as well. It's not like he's catching up. He sees this every day, but he's never seen it to quite the degree that he's been seeing it lately. People not doing their jobs. Anger makes you stupid. Stupid gets you killed, right? That's what it comes down to. It's the same reason why Judith is like adamant about staying and fighting. It's that anger. Like, I don't want to pick this up because I don't want to have to believe that I have to pick this up. But Daryl's like, he's too battle worn. Daryl is basically what Mercer could be when he passes a membrane. Whatever they're going through is very important to watch, because like Daryl is basically Mercer's cautionary tale without all the baggage. Sorry, I have to kind of like bring all of this together in one crescendo, and that's Daryl doing what he did to Lance's hand is a lot like just that frustration that this could have worked, and you just gone and fucked it up. And Mercer's going through the same thing. if everybody's not doing their part, this thing will fall. If somebody tries to burn it down, my own sister, it's all going to fall. And is that what we really want? All these Daryls giving up hope in a system that could bring a life for these kids in the future. I thought this place would be great for my kids effectively. And so that went into that as well. Bringing it back to Leah, I think we're not done exploring that little bit just yet. I feel like that's going to factor in somehow into all of this. Like the fact that I thought I could have a life after this, or that somebody out there loved me, that sort of thing. There's a lot of components for Daryl to play with here. And I think some of that is going to come into play here.
I think Leah and Daryl's relationship kind of fell apart before Lance got involved. I mean, obviously, because like we established before, Leah was always going to choose her family. Daryl was always going to choose his family. But even still, I think Sharondy's right. I'm not sure that we're going to see any more
references,
emotion from Daryl regarding what happened to Leah. And yeah, even though she sided with the wrong group and trying to kill him or whatever, what they had was real, and that's something to mourn. I really, really would like to see Daryl sad about that. Yeah. I don't think it's really set in, maybe.
He's using Glenn as a reason to not feel things, because I did this because I have to make up for Glenn, so I don't get to have any feelings. I don't have to have feelings about it. That's why I did it. And maybe he's been using Glad as all these years. That's what he's been using to shield himself from having to have feeling or express those feelings.
What happened? He'll always carry it with him. He's always going to feel responsible, but he doesn't have to continue punishing himself for it. But it's something that he's going to carry with him. I still blame him.
For Glenn's death.
Absolutely. But, I don't hate him. Yeah, it happened. His actions got Glenn killed. That's something he's going to carry with him, but I think he's done punishing. I think he can be done punishing himself.
Right. You can live with it, but you don't have to live by it.
Exactly. And as far as protecting Maggie, that's almost an insult. If I were Maggie, I'd be like, I can take care of myself. Thank you. I did fine without you for 6 years.
Right, but he's talking about a specific moment.
I had her right where I wanted her before you shot her in the back of the head, Daryl.
I don't know if that's true. It looked pretty dire for Maggie there for a second.
I was just about to pull my moves on her when you came in, Daryl.
All the Maggie haters in the world were almost gonna jizz at once until you shot Leah. Whatever.
I didn't know how it was gonna go down in that scene, and honestly, I would have been fine either way.
I was more upset that I didn't want her to kill Maggie, but I feel like that would have been such an exciting twist to it. Mm-hmm. Nobody would have expected
with all the
that
talk
to happen.
of Dead City or Isle of the Dead at the time. Like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Who's going to take care of Herschel now?
It's all right.
Daryl.
We still have our potential Daryl's not actually going to have a show situation, so the twist could still be there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of twists that could happen at the end of the day. But, right, because we've talked about that. That's very interesting. Oh, we didn't talk about what we should have at the top of the show was that, hey, just like I'm sorry to bring this up in the middle of the thing. I know we're in the middle of a thing. But Squawking Dead is actually now on Patreon. Patreon.com/SquawkingDead. If you have been hesitant about just following us at ko-fi.com/SquawkingDead. Patreon is an option that is available. We still do post our recording sessions publicly on Patreon, so just follow us there as well, or just there. If you prefer it, if you're following other creators on Patreon, give us a follow. You don't have to join a membership tier to join in a recording session. They are public. Whether you're following at ko-fi.com/SquawkingDead or on patreon.com/SquawkingDead, it's a way to get the recording sessions or know when the unedited episodes drop. These are things we don't post on social media. These are for the hardcore fans who want to follow our journey behind the scenes. And there's some pretty cool bonuses depending on the tier level you join. Every tier level at patreon.com/SquawkingDead has an exclusive sticker that you will get at the end of 3 months. The Whispers tier will get a free t-shirt as well at the end of 3 months for your patronage. Ooh. So yeah, that's some pretty sweet deals. And cool. In honor of both that, the third trimester of The Walking Dead's 11th season, and a sale in our merch store, which is undoubtedly will happen when we release this episode, we are going to be releasing a new t-shirt design in honor of all of that for the 11th and final season. So be on the lookout for that on social media. And if this episode premieres on time at a decent time, I will show you what it looks like on the screen right now. Oh, isn't that great, guys? Oh, ooh. And if you're already on our Discord, you've seen the design in process as I was tweaking it around for the graphics, and you've seen the podcast graphics already and the thumbnail graphics as well. That's the style of the t-shirt. Is similar to our season 11 podcast graphics, but it is tweaked to show the end, but also the dawn of The Walking Dead. But it's a very beautiful design, and it honors the series fairly well. Enjoy it, and if you do like it, order it, and you'll be ordering it at a sale price. So it's probably $14, and you can get to our merch store at squawkingdead.com. Click the menu in the top left, and click merch. Or click the description of this video if you're watching. It'll be there. Let's talk about the title sequence. The changes to the title sequence for these first 2 episodes of the 3rd trimester. What do you think of what you've seen?
I was like, that's different, but what the heck is that? It took a second.
After 2 episodes, I still don't know what I've seen.
I was like, my eyes are going across, trying to look and see what that is.
So it looks like it sped up the title sequence. It starts off with the noose at Hilltop, I think, and then it shows an overhead shot of the hilltop. And then when it gets to the windmill of Alexandria, in the normal title sequence, it shows you an overhead of Alexandria itself. And then the only major difference at the end is when it finally, just before it shows the logo, it turns to Mercer and his Commonwealth soldiers in the foreground from the Walker's perspective. And behind it, it shows the Commonwealth in the background. The idea of we are the wall that separates the Walkers from what we now only think is civilization as we know it.
With the big red sun behind it, covered in haze.
Which, like I said, is in our new design. So that's why I used it. So there you go. A sun, or it could be like a red moon, like a blood moon.
They also, for the first time, have all of the names of all of the cast in the credits. It's not just the main cast.
It's like a longer version of the song,
they
too.
extended the song,
because there's
too.
an extension at the end. It's like a little bit different. Some more bass that comes in.
Yeah.
I thought it was about the same length, but I can double check. The theme song is a minute long.
And the Walking Dead logo at the end, it's no longer cracked and broken and overgrown. It's like a solid, but it has blood running down it instead.
Right. And the blood increases in the next title sequence, it seems like.
The G's bleeding in the first one, and the G and the D are bleeding in the second one.
What I wrote in my notes was more blood in the 11-18 notes. Boy, we got a lot of blood between these 2 episodes. What is it about the midsections of Commonwealth soldiers that they fall apart so quickly?
They're made of gelatin.
They're made of spaghetti.
No complaints.
It's all that soft eating and soft living they've got.
It's all that soft serve.
Yeah, all that ice cream.
they just didn't work out on their core, I guess, or I don't know. Skipping leg day or something. I don't know.
It's all legs and biceps or whatever.
Yeah, essentially.
Do you feel like they're just moving around really quickly? Like they're getting from place to place like of the blink of an eye, right? Because Oceanside is fairly distant from where they are, distant from Hilltop or Alexandria, but yet Lance could go there to Oceanside and then come back to wherever they are. Remember in Game of Thrones in the last season where everybody's like, how are they traveling so fast from place to place?
Yeah.
How did Daenerys get from King's Landing to Winterfell in like 24 hours? How are they moving? I understand like they have cars and stuff, but how are they getting everywhere so fast? Do you guys feel that too, or is it just me?
Time is passing a lot quicker than I thought it was, and I think that had something to do with it because we're now 1 year in of them living at the Commonwealth.
Right, because it was Founders Day.
Yeah, so it's like we've hit another Founders Day because when they were talking about it, I'm like, wait, the lottery? A year?
Yeah, we just saw
But then I was like, oh, that makes sense because, how are they getting everywhere? Obviously, things are taking longer than I thought they were.
So in the time that it took Lance to go to Oceanside, why the hell did they stay there? Why didn't they go away from where they were and like go back to Hilltop, go back to Allegro somewhere? Why did they all just like, oh, let's wait for Lance to come back and chase us some more? What? I don't understand what the reasoning was there.
That's a good
I guess
question,
I assumed
actually.
they were somewhere else. I assumed that they had tried to move, but travel is slow going because they don't have vehicles and they don't have horses. So they're on foot.
And Daryl can't come back. And who knows if, what kills me is what happened in the time span between the time Daryl shoots Lance in the face, which obviously is roughly stitched up. Is he out there the entire time? And I imagine he is. I imagine he feels like he can't come back until he gets them. And however long it takes for him to get back, he has to get them. But remembering Oceanside, I feel like, is going to be a very important plot point because we may see what Lance did to them, what that coin flip meant for them.
Isn't that where Aaron and Lydia and oh my God,
you're talking about Lydia and Elijah,
weren't they going to Oceanside
with Aaron and?
Weren't they on their way to Oceanside?
Oh yeah,
I think they are.
They're
yes.
gonna find out. Yeah. They're gonna. I'm actually really nervous about it. And they specifically mentioned Cindy, which I was like, oh, she's still around.
What do you expect, Aaron, Lydia, Elijah, and is it Jerry that's going with them? Somebody was going with all. It was like 4 people.
Lydia, Elijah, Aaron, and
I
is it
think
Jerry? Which is weird because where's
Jerry.
Nabila and the kids?
Yeah,
They're in the hiding place.
Or was it
I
Gabe?
have no idea.
No, it wasn't Gabe.
No, it wasn't Gabe.
So it must have been Jerry. I don't know who else it would have been.
Gabe's out on the run still.
But, no, Gabe
he's
is with
back.
Rosita.
Yeah, he gave
Did he get back?
he did the sermon thing.
And they're probably going to have an
Oh,
argument.
that's right.
Just like everybody. Just like Negan and Annie are probably. This is what I like about 1118 is that it hones in further on found family. Well, like the weird juxtaposition of found family versus actual family, which is which now. And what do we do? It's kind of like you said, Bridget. I think like it's like broken glass. Like you can't pretend that this place doesn't exist and has potential to be better or to be even the way it is, that being way better than being out there.
I did like that moment though at the end of 18 then where Judith she had so much hope for it. And yeah, she wants to help everybody, which is great. But you can tell she takes the gun back because it's like, this isn't safe either. And she had to go through that same thing that Carl went through when he was like roughly that age. It doesn't matter where we are. It's never, ever going to be 100% safe ever. And if I want this to be a better place, I have to be the one to make that change and to work towards it. I can't just reap all the benefits and not do any of the work.
To get in her corner a bit, as much as we give so much credit to Judith for being an exceptional kid, she is still a kid.
Yeah, she's super young. It's like devastating what she's gone through.
I feel so bad for Judith because she's getting a taste of what her life could have been like or could even be like. But now she's come to the realization that she's not ever really going to be able to have that life. At least in her little brain, like I'll never be able to have this. This is never going to happen.
Little bird brain.
So I mean, like
sorry, just the way you said that. I'm sorry.
It was making me think of the movie Awakenings with Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, where Robert De Niro gets the sleeping sickness as a kid, and he's basically in a coma his whole life, but and just sleeps, is asleep in a bed. And Robin Williams is the doctor that comes up with treatment that wakes these patients up for the first time in 30 years, and they can get up and they can walk and talk and they can talk to people and they can have a life. But then the medicine stops working and they all go back into that state again. And that's kind of how I feel like Judith. She's been in this horror fest her entire life, and then she gets a taste of what her life could be like in a real world, and now it's going to be taken away from her again, and there's nothing she can do to stop it and nothing she can do to fix it. And it just made me so sad at that point when I was watching it for her and for all the other kids.
I'm so glad that they gave that character the opportunity to have that moment to truly be a child, running running and like hiding and telling your brother like, don't tell Daryl where I am. I'm sure it was like, don't tell him where I am or I'm gonna hit you. Like, and then
emo moment.
And then she like runs off, and then he finds her like pouting.
Parents just don't understand.
He finds her like pouting after she gets caught by
like, you're not my real dad, Daryl. Sorry.
And I love that because that's so.
To be fair, neither is Rick.
It's oh, poor Jude. To be fair, it's just like it's so appropriate for her. She's that age to be mad and to feel rebellious in some way. And she's had so much obligation hung on her for so long.
Oh God, I hesitate from saying this. I know they're not the same, but it's a really good foil for like Sebastian in a sense. Like all his obligation is expected of him. Does he have a chance to forge his own path? Does he even give a shit? Or it's kind of like Hope. Is it like, I'm never going to be great in her eyes? And we find out that he had a brother, which, I mean, feels like a throwaway line in retrospect when I'm thinking about it now. But like, are they going to make anything more of that? Oh, I was expected, my brother died. He was supposed to be the golden child. Now that was just, the baton just automatically flips over to me. I wasn't supposed to be the guy to do all this shit. It's all thrust upon him, constantly reminded of it being slapped in the face by his mother a lot and being yelled at his mother a lot to be the thing I want you to be. That's very interesting. And for even Daryl to say, Judith, just stop, is kind of sort of an interesting mirror of the relationship between father and child and mother and child.
Well, that's why I'm glad he went and apologized. No parent is going to be perfect. You're not going to have exactly that same kid over and over and over again. Otherwise, by the fourth child, you'd be like, I'm perfect at this. You're not. Like, it's always
Which
like
no
it doesn't
parent ever says.
Yeah, and but every parent feels like I'm not capable of doing this at some point. Daryl's clearly very much feeling that right now. He also gave her room to feel the way that she was feeling. That's kind of a newer parenting element. People in the 80s and 90s didn't really give their kids room to feel the way that they wanted to feel. Not always. And now there's kind of this focus on like, it's okay to be upset, but you have to learn how to work through it. That's much more successful.
And he gave her the reasons why.
Standpoint.
Like once she had her like moment, he's like, you have to understand that like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like being super honest. He's like, but what I do know is that this place ain't safe. I could explain to you why it isn't safe, but I think you believe me when I say it's not safe. And that, listen, I know I'm not your dad, but I'm your dad. And like, I just love the little just the little bit of like Judith takes after Daryl in that way that she finds her own spot to cool off just like he does. And I like that little note. Like, oh, that you are kind of like me in a weird way. And so, you had a spot behind the river. And so, oh, yeah, well, I understand where you came from now. Not great. Alone most of the time. And she doesn't really get the chance to be alone. Like you said, and I wrote this on my notes, like, yeah, if you go out there, Judith, and she knows this, there aren't going to be a lot of spots to be alone, because the second you're alone is the second somebody, like a person probably, or feral, or even a walker might get you.
Yeah.
And so she's taking that one little bit of advantage to cool off, to be able to cool off and have a moment. And I think she even knows that she ultimately will side with Daryl in that this place isn't safe. I think she knows that even when she says, I don't want to have to take it, because the second I take it means accepting that this place isn't safe, because she's wearing the hat, which she has not been wearing. Not in the last episode, not in 11-17. Mm-hmm. She wears it here because she knows deep down he is right, but she just doesn't want him to be right. And even I don't think he's right, by the way, but I think she just does accept it. She's a lot like, I can't believe I'm saying this. She's a lot like me. I know you're right when you have your criticisms, but there's a part of me that goes, I need to come to that. I need to accept what you're telling me. I'm having a moment. I'm a 9, however old she is, child. We can debate that forever. But I am a child, and sometimes I just need to come around to it. I need a moment. I need to be alone in a church pew or whatever, and I'll get on board. We all have our ways. So that we found out a lot about me in the last couple seconds, I think. But I do like how it really, and I didn't really notice it before until now, because I was going to approach them separately, the relationship between Pamela and Sebastian and the relationship between Daryl and Judith. And something about the way Max tries to, what Lance says is you're going to have to be willing to burn it all down. And then, look, Sebastian's an asshole. Sebastian caused the deaths of many people. But just like with Negan, you can't ignore intentions. And I feel like his intentions were awful. I feel like he thought like he would never be good, so I might as well make my life as a hoodlum, trying to steal money so I could eke out a better existence than what I'm expected to exist.
But there was something really sad about all of it. I wasn't like,
I was trying to couch my upcoming comments.
Screw that guy. Like, it wasn't like that. It was like, I felt bad for him. I had some pity for him, and I felt like in a way, you are a victim to your circumstances. Not 100%, because you could have chosen to take the right path and do the right thing. And maybe it has to do with meeting Teo in real life. I'm not sure. And he's just so damn likable as a person that it's hard to be like, screw that guy.
I'm fully admitting that that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think it absolutely is, because I can sit here and be like, fuck Sebastian.
Okay.
Like, fuck
then
that
I guess
dude.
meeting
I think
Teo
he
in
was
person really skewed my opinion now.
Well, I mean, I've met Teo, but I haven't talked to him
extensively, yeah.
to the point that you guys have. I mean, we had a conversation at the Squawking Dead booth for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah,
and he
that's
is a
true.
really great guy. He's obviously
Where was
not
I?
Sebastian.
No, I'm kidding.
Teo's amazing. Teo's amazing. But Sebastian's a fucking prick. And I think he was a prick even before the apocalypse. I mean,
I don't doubt
he was
that.
this way his whole life, and his mom has allowed it. His mom has always made excuses. He's always gotten away with everything. If he gets in trouble and he's like, oh, my friends talked me into it. And Pamela's like, oh, you're right. My poor boy was coerced. You know, I'm sure that's how his whole life was.
What really
friends?
bothers me about that, though, is the fact
ones
that
Pamela paid
she's so quick to hit him and then degrade him that
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't get this.
She's more worried about how he's making her look.
But then,
I like what's
this
happening
is
here.
what bothers me I see this sometimes in parents. It's like, you cannot do that and expect a different result. That's idiotic. You have to change the way that you're parenting. If your kid's a shit, I'm sorry, but some of that is on you.
But Pamela's going to be the type of parent that would never admit that. It's all Sebastian's fault because he's not being what she wants him to be.
Which is
Here,
ridiculous.
I told you what I expect. It is. And as a parent, I can tell you I'm victim to this sometimes. I have to remind myself, look, this isn't working. My tactics aren't working anymore. I can't just keep screaming, turn in your homework. Screaming and yelling is not working anime.
Yeah.
Even though
Just
sometimes
turn
that's
in
all
your
you have. just fucking do it. Just fucking do it. As parents, we get to our wits' end. Now, granted, I'm not sure Pamela has tried other avenues. She seems like the kind of parent that's really only worried about her image and what things look like, not what they really are.
Yeah.
Well, she became the politician she needed to be because she believed in the system. And I think part of her probably even thought that her father would be around a lot longer to make sure that system would stay in place. But in lieu of that, she believes in the system so much, maybe for her father, maybe legacies do factor in, but she believed in the system so much that she couldn't even see the flaws, even though she knows inherently, because Lance kind of alludes to it, but maybe she doesn't feel or know the extent to which Lance made her wish possible. I do the things that you don't have to worry about the system. I feel like Pamela doesn't separate or can't separate the system working from Lance having made the system in which she feels like can't fall possible.
Yeah, like he's part of the reason she has what she does, but she says verbatim, it's not verbatim.
You thought you were in the game.
You thought you were in the game and
player.
you're not even a player. I get what you're saying. I feel like I don't think there's any unintentionality though in what she's doing. I think she does know that about Lance because I think that she uses that to her benefit because she knows that this system keeps her where she is comfortable. And so that's why she believes in it. Not because her dad set it up, not because she feels like it's the right system. None of that. I think it's all about this keeps me where I want to be. I get pedicures still and my life is fine. And yes, I have stress because my son won't do exactly what I tell him to. He needs to be like his grandfather. Which is some sort of
he's
like
expected
weird,
to lead.
This is the life
ridiculous.
I want.
Yeah, but like your son isn't fit to lead, and you know that he sucks. And instead of going, you know what, I'm gonna just let him live the life that he wants to lead, which would have been like the mature choice to do, like to make. She instead is like, no, I'm gonna like shoehorn you into this. You're gonna do it. Because there will never be a moment in my life in which I do not have access to all of these resources. It's ridiculous.
I don't know that I 100% agree with that. I think she does definitely reap the benefits of leadership. And I feel like she's like, I had to sacrifice my life of philanthropy or whatever it is that she had to sacrifice to do this. So why shouldn't you? You know, there's a little bit of that going on too, like a little bit of revenge. Like, you know, if I had to do it, you do too.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they kind of had that conversation about it.
I don't think she can separate I think she's mashed those two things together. Like, well, this is what I get. I'm owed this for having to sideline my shit because that's what everybody requires. But this is how she thinks is what I'm saying. It's not what really is.
I just hate it. I just hate it. I just hate it so much. I really dislike her.
I want to give you a little bit of a notch in your corner, though, because I feel like there may be moments where she starts to see, and maybe she does with what's happening now. She starts to see that, oh, maybe this isn't perfect, but hey, fuck it anyway. I'm an active participant. I can't unsee what I've seen, but now I don't care. I'm going to double down. I can see that happening.
Oh, see,
now.
I feel like she definitely knows that things are not good for certain people. The fact that she said that she handpicks the lottery winners led me to believe that. I think hands down, she knows exactly what's going on, but she chooses to show a blind eye to it because what does it matter to her? They're just workers. This is what they're supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to lead. My son is supposed to lead. They're supposed to work for me. That's like the thought process. It's disgusting. I mean, this is classism at its finest.
But that's the system she believes in. And not to her credit, but like in The Walking Dead, you expect fairness and civility to win the day, but it doesn't. That's why the Saviors became a thing, and that lasted for however long it lasted. That's why Rick lasted as long as he did until he had to keep adapting, because we think that that's the right system, but it doesn't quite work that way. So I try not to almost judge. Like, it's weird to have to look at the Commonwealth for lasting as long as it has lasted to say, okay, yeah, it's not what we would typically attribute to a perfect system, and it's not by far, right? Because it's slowly degraded over time to not really match up to what it probably could have been, but like it worked. That's the thing. The weird part is that it worked, and she thinks it works, so she keeps going.
We live in the Commonwealth every day, all of us. We all go to our drudgy jobs, and we play the lottery. Of course, nobody's handpicking as far as we know, but we all live that life every day. Like, we are the workers. We don't rise up and rebel all the time. It takes something major. It takes a publicized death to motivate the people to rise up. So, I mean, I think this is a pretty accurate depiction of modern society just in a microcosm.
There's so much to say to that, but I actually don't disagree to a certain extent, though, because it says more about you as an individual, right? You have the choice to do something about it, but you don't. Does that make sense? Like, you out here in the Not Walking Dead.
They could rise up any day and take out the Commonwealth if they wanted to, but they don't want to because they're comfortable too. At least more comfortable than they would be out there.
Because Sebastian is right.
Yeah, he is right. He's exactly right.
Yeah, he was right in his speech. I mean, he was a dick, but like, he was right about it. He wasn't wrong.
What he said is something that we might say to ourselves any given day. We put up with it, and we're pathetic for doing so.
Sure. Yeah.
No, and it's harsh. It's like,
because we're comfortable.
Oh, it's not any worse than what I'd say to myself.
Well, I mean, we're comfortable, at least.
Yes, exactly.
Compared to some others, we're comfortable. So why rock the boat?
Right. Because, hey, we're, to a certain extent, we're fed. To a certain extent, we're afforded some luxuries and we're afforded some rights.
Well, and it's all work. Change isn't just change.
Change is hard.
It's all work. I mean, we're like just talking about like this trauma therapy, right? Like, and it's all work that I have to put in. I knowingly made that decision and I hate it and I bitch about it every time I do it.
Right.
so yeah, if I can go to work and eat ice cream and live like an okay life and I'm safe and I'm fine, theoretically, then I'm just gonna stick with it.
Every day's a gift, right? But that's kind of what makes, and that's why I love playing with both what Sebastian represents and also says to what Max is doing and says, because I feel like this is maybe just my opinion, but I feel like what they're both doing is just fucking wrong. You want to like what Max is doing. You do. And I do. Like, there's a part of me that like is 100% behind her corner until I realize the fact that that change doesn't stick. And if I wanted to harm as many people as possible, I would play that tape, because it wasn't just the walkers coming out of the pen that Calhoun and Vega pew, 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 and then they all came out and started terrorizing. It wasn't that. It was what Sebastian had said that was played out on the radio. If you want to burn the system down, then what happens to these people who were dragged into, who have no choice but to change?
I mean, right, the people, as I was thinking, our group has the Midas touch when it comes to tearing down wherever the hell they end up. Right? It doesn't matter where they go, they tear it down. And they're doing it here too. They're tearing down the Commonwealth. Oh, no, like, oh, great. That makes you, you guys feel self-righteous and you're doing the right thing, but you're not, because you're dooming all of these people who are living here and who don't want to go back out there, who are absolutely positively satisfied to do this every day because they don't have to be out there. And you are taking that away from them.
Incapable.
Right, because they've been behind walls for 12 years. So you're dooming all of these people that you're saving, but you're not saving them. You're going to kill them, because where can they go when this all burns down? They're all going to die.
Right. And I feel like I don't want to attribute that to our people. Our people are really taking that. You feel it across many different couples that are placed on screen. You do feel it with Negan and Annie, Rosita and Gabe. You feel a lot with Judith and Daryl, but you do see it across the spectrum in different scenarios and different levels of comfort. And Ezekiel and Carol, even, they have this moment where it's like Ezekiel just won't come out and say it. It's like, I think I'm going to stay here and maybe help this kingdom stay up for as long as it can, because that's all we can do in life is give people comfort for as long as because he has this like really realistic view. Is like, yeah, this place might go down and it probably will, but I'm going to keep it alive as much as possible. Even though he's probably one of those contributing factors to maybe burning it down. I don't know, but he feels it in his heart when something is wrong, he has to say something. But I don't think he would have done what Max did.
He has a second chance to right what he considers wrongs of the kingdom. He lost the kingdom due to it fell into disrepair and everything that happened, and then they ended up losing the kingdom. And that was arguably, aside from his relationship with Carol, probably one of his biggest regrets. You could tell that he misses that. Not necessarily the leading, because he got to take the crown off for a little bit, pun intended, for a little bit to be able to kind of relax and everything. But for him, this is a second chance at maybe this time, maybe it won't work. Maybe it'll be the same thing repeating itself. But maybe this time I can stick it out and I can make sure that this place succeeds and makes it.
You know what? Maybe even him imparting some of his wisdom onto this, here, maybe I can help these people not repeat the same mistakes, or, having been there before, I can be a part of that solution to keep it up as long as humanly possible.
Well, and there's more resources there for people who would know how to make the repairs for the buildings and stuff like that. It wouldn't be the same situation. It wouldn't be him reliving it necessarily.
Yeah, there's a lot of specialization in the Commonwealth. It's it's kind of like the argument we had before of everybody being everything all the time. Fighters, bricklayers, bread makers.
And it's a dialed back version of himself, right? He used to be the great king Ezekiel with a tiger at his side. And now he's Ezekiel and he takes care of the rabbits and the goats. You know what I mean? It's a dialed back version of himself. And I just love, I love that for him. I really do. I really love that for his character. And as fearful as I have been about what's going to happen to him, if he went out defending this second chance at a kingdom, how beautiful is that ending?
Dramatic pause.
Just it's so poetic. That would be such a beautiful way to honor that character. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, and I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it, but
with a proud kitten by his side.
A little mini Shiva.
Allow me to go back to the point though, is that yes. I mean, I'm not saying Sharondy, I feel like Max is the one with the Midas touch in this scenario. I feel like our people are ebbing between, hey, we can just go. We don't have to help these people. And maybe you're right. Maybe let's not put our Midas touch on these people. Let's just go. Let's leave them to their own devices.
By releasing that article about Sebastian, they started the crumbling.
And I feel like that was the honest, okay, if they could have gotten justice for this one thing, it would slowly expose the system for what it was. And it didn't have to all burn down all at once. But Max says, I want to keep going. It's whoa. That was alarm bells ringing in my head. And I was like, how far are you willing to go? Lance says you have to burn it down. And then I think Lance is using, by extension, Max's naivete. And he's saying, oh, this bitch has been at Pamela's side this whole time feeling these feels. And she just wants to burn the shit down. I'm going to take advantage of that. Because wasn't it Lance that discovered the communications and implanted Stephanie Vega in Max's place?
Yeah,
I didn't know who she was.
I don't know who in particular found out, but
we know that Vega is Lance's gal. And
well, yeah.
all of a sudden you're with this other lady who's calling herself Stephanie. So Lance did pick up on these communications.
Guys, I'm going to say goodnight while we're at sort of a break. I got to be up at 5 a.m, and my brother just called and told us that him and his girlfriend got sideswiped on the highway.
Oh my God.
What in the world?
What?
Yeah. Apparently there was some guy driving all over, just like hitting people. Several calls were made to the police in the area about
What
this
state
vehicle.
was he in?
I think they're in Colorado still.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm glad
the
I'm
interstate?
assuming they're both okay.
Look,
Yes,
everybody
yeah,
in your
everybody's
family
fine.
needs
The
to stay off the roads the
truck's
next
a
couple
little-
of days.
Dented?
Right?
Yeah, the birds are not allowed to drive.
Everybody's fine. The car's still drivable. But fuck.
He's okay. He's all right. You're all right.
Yeah, everybody's good.
Look how blessed we are to have you.
I know it's a lot.
I know, Rachel.
you go-
You're tired, and it's been a really weird week. So
Love you guys.
love you.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
See you soon.
When Negan told Carol that he was married and his girlfriend was pregnant, or his wife was pregnant, and Carol looked at him like, "Good, another one I
Why
can kill.
Why are you telling me this?
Another one for me to kill."
No.
How do I unconsciously kill this precious life? I'll just put more amniotic fluid in her. That's how it works, right?
I'm sorry, but Annie is so dead. I mean, like, she is like the reddest. Just put a red shirt on her and
Poor
don't even make
thing.
it subtle or anything. Just, she is like the reddest of red shirts.
I honestly thought when she was getting her ultrasound that she didn't have to die. And then she said, "We don't have to be here." And then I said, "Bitch." And Negan's right. Negan's like you can tell he's agreeing with her to agree with her, but he's like saying the things that say, but my dad said, when you have a kid, it's like your life isn't yours. You have to think of that too much amniotic. I want to be a helicopter parent. I'm making sure this kid is never not safe. And so then she said that, and I'm like, oh, she's going to be defiant. And like, look, I feel like I'm saying this with everything. I would normally be in her corner. I'm like, yeah, you stand on principle. Yeah, we don't need to be here. But no, I don't agree with that. I don't. You're with child. You need to think about that shit.
As soon as the doctor lady was like, "You have high amniotic fluid," I was like, "Oh, she's dead. Just go ahead and kill her now, because she's dead. She's dead."
Just right time of death from now. Yeah.
Time of death this minute.
Posthumously. Posthumously. I don't know.
I actually thought during that scene, I feel like Annie might live and that Negan is going to die and he's going to sacrifice himself to save Herschel. That's what I was thinking about during that scene. I was like, how do you give this guy a redemption? Like, you cannot redeem him. He's irredeemable. But like the closest that you could get is if he sacrifices his life for Herschel's.
Well, and then he must not die because of City of the Dead, which is filming. So,
but there's a theory about that.
That it's happening.
Yep. That it happens during these last 8 episodes.
And that there's going to be a time jump or some sort. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All I know is that, just going back to the broader point, rather than the gang thinking that they can solve all these problems and perhaps bring down the Commonwealth faster, they're really hesitating. They'd be like, we can leave. And we can leave this to its own devices and maybe it'll persist. Or some of our characters be like, but maybe we can be a part of the system and help it just a little bit. And then Max says, fuck all y'all. I'm gonna bring this mother bitch down now because that's what it needs, apparently.
I don't know. I've never, like, you know me as a person. I'm like, yeah, screw the man and viva la revolution. And like, I'm like, so the fact that I'm like, but just leave it and like all those people can live that. That's like against everything in me innately, but like for some reason I still feel that way when I watch this. Like, you're going too far.
Yeah.
Viva la revolution, but like calm down.
But like, can you turn it down to 1 instead of 1,000? by the end of 1118. It feels like it is all burning down. It feels like, and maybe this is just where they want us right now.
Well, can we just talk about like the elephant in the room? Sebastian's dead.
Dead.
Like,
right.
Like my exact words to Sharon D last night were, holy shit. Holy shit, I just got to the part where Sebastian dies. That throws off so many theories.
I'm so happy.
I am
happy.
too. I'm glad that it's not playing out exactly like the comics, because why would we just want to retread the same thing? The whole show has been different than the comics. There's been elements that have been similar, but it's all been different, right?
This is a major departure.
Yeah, which is good.
I don't know if I even mentioned this, but I feel like I played this out in my head a million times. I'm so happy that they've diverged from the comics. Now, there's no telling who they might replace Sebastian with, but there's a part of me that's just like, I'm almost glad that it's not him. That the people almost got what they want, and that might be worse. They saw the source of their problems, and they themselves could have said, hey, it's a commentary on both people and Sebastian too. Like, okay, your debt is due. Your payment is due. I'm not sad that Sebastian died, in a way. Like, there's a part of me that says this makes sense, but there's another part of me that says, but what does it say about us, the great Commonwealth citizens, that we would allow a citizen even like that to die? Are we that desensitized from life and death?
How fitting is this? It brings me back to the Boondock Saints. There's that whole story that they tell in the Boondock Saints about the indifference of good men. It's all about that woman, Kitty, who lived in that apartment in New York. This is like a famous story where like she was being murdered. Apparently the story isn't correct, but she was being
Forest Hills, Queens.
Yes, she was being murdered, and everybody saw it happening, and nobody did anything to stop it, because there becomes like this like fear of, I don't want to get involved because I don't want to put myself in danger or whatever. What is it? It's something about the indifference of good men.
Evil exists when good men do nothing.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah. That's it. And for anybody that doesn't know, the Boondock Saints is like an amazing film starring Norman Reedus, Sean Patrick Flannery, and Willem Dafoe. And one of Willem Dafoe's arguably one of his best performances of all time. Woof! There are some good scenes in that with him. Super weird, but great. And it had Norman Reedus in it, and that's when I fell in love with him when I was in high school, and I was like, oh my god, he's so dreamy.
He's like the younger one.
I can like hardly see his eyes. He's so dreamy. And then I married someone who's constantly squinty.
I don't know what
It's
to
love,
say to that.
You know?
Oh, I see.
She has a type.
I
Squinty.
Clearly not dead, but clearly
do.
squinty.
Not dead.
I guess
Not
it's
dead,
a thing.
but like if you have long hair and kind of
He
squinty.
opens his eyes as wide as he can.
And you talk like down here, then probably you're for me.
Vacancy. What?
There's no
Kidding.
vacancy.
No vacancy.
No, there's no vacancy.
Yeah, there's an anchor on that ship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not that anyone is interested. Everyone's like, thank God I'm not her type.
You haven't seen my DMs. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
People are sliding into your DMs to talk about me.
Is she? Yeah, is she? I just don't know. I mean, are my eyes squinty enough?
And the answer is probably not. Probably not.
Right. I mean, I'll send them your way, but some of them
probably
I
not.
mean, I don't know.
You gotta be looking like French Stewart in Third Rock from the Sun.
Yep, that's my type. That's
French
my man. Yeah, I hope you're wearing a fur coat too, baby.
Hey, baby.
Rachel wanted us to be sure we brought up the Freddy Krueger Walker.
Yep, there we go. Freddy Krueger Walker. We just brought it up.
Did you? I thought about it when I first saw it. I was like, that kind of looks like Freddy Krueger. And then when I saw the behind the scenes, like it is the red and green sweater and the burned marbly face.
I was trying to freeze frame the shot to see if we could see the glove, quote unquote, but I couldn't see it.
Finally, all of my mentions of "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch" are valid.
Yeah.
On this podcast, it was all related. I knew.
I was gonna say, until your boyfriend bashed him in the head and your dreams are dashed.
You know, it's like love is hard.
Love is like sometimes Bridget, this pain makes you stronger.
I wonder if they're like
dumb.
foreshadowing
So
what's
wrong.
going to happen to Lance, because Freddie was killed to protect all of the kids in the neighborhood, and they're gonna kill Lance to protect all of the kids. So maybe they're gonna like fucking douse him in oil and set him on fire or something.
But yeah, but that's, you know what? And that's, so bringing it back to Sebastian, I feel like
I don't know
this
how
is the
I
weird.
feel about that shit. I was just like,
that's, oh, we're cranking it back to 1,000 again. Right. So, but that's what I was like saying. Like, we're blowing the Commonwealth is blowing their wad on Sebastian, their moral wad. Work with me here. And they,
this is the
and
worst
they spent,
way to say this.
and they spent it all on Sebastian when clearly there's a bigger threat.
When clearly they
Called
should have
Lance
put it in the
Hornsby.
spank bank. Clearly.
You just
There, I
couldn't-
went with it. I went with it.
Well, and his name is Lance Hornsby. So,
Lance Hornsby for the porn version of this.
right. It is a picture of a trumpet with a bee playing it. With a heart on. A stinger, rather.
What
Sorry.
is this? What just happened?
I just fixed your obvious. Okay, anyway. Right. I just, where did we go wrong?
Someone is into the B movie like a little too much.
Let's get the Photoshop skills going. Or
It's gonna make me
non-skills.
bust out some Shakespeare with some Taming of the Shrew, talking about the bee with the tongue and the tail, and
That's where we get the birds and the bees from. Anyway, okay, going back to the point. They've spent all their moral indignation. I'm not editing the last thing at all.
I know.
But they spent all their moral indignation on taking it out on Sebastian, that they don't have any left over for the possibility that they don't even know of. They know that Lance was captured and she's brought to justice. But will he receive justice? Especially in light of the schemes that he has in store, the chaos that he's trying to sow so that he can take over, taking advantage of a hole in the system that requires a vacuum that would enter. Like, hey, you have Pamela, she fucked you, and she tried to pin this shit on me. So because Sebastian's a great scapegoat now, and now he can move in on that territory, explaining, hey, I have alliances with this, that, and the other. I'm the one who kept, this is something that I've said in our coverage of B. I have all these alliances. I'm the one who really kept the Commonwealth up and running. There's mismanagement. Nobody's doing their job. I would make sure that you were fed. I have the confidence of the troops, not like even Captain Dipshit over here, General Dipshit over here, who just keeps screwing things up and not being there when you need him, even though you love him so much. I feel bad for the Commonwealth in a sense. Like, yeah, of course, I feel like there were moments with Sebastian and Max where, like, Max, of course, came into this knowing she was going to fuck this whole thing up. But, like, we sacrificed one individual, Sebastian, and there were moments where he looks straight at Max when he says, but I'm going to turn it over to somebody who can say those words far better than I can. Like, he felt in that moment that he was like, you know, your conversation with me straightened me out a little bit. I got out what I felt like I needed to get out to go along. And he's looking straight at Max and says, but, you know, I'm going to turn it to somebody who can say these words better than me. Like, oh my God, she reached him in a weird roundabout way, especially with her parting shot that said, you know, you act like an asshole. You act like a spoiled child, because that's what
to be an asshole.
Everyone expects it. So who's left to disappoint? If you keep doing it to everybody, of course you're going to be that. So that one moment where he says, oh, I'm not going to be that. And she says, I don't fucking care. You're gonna die, bitch.
You know, in this universe, if you show any kind of redemption or moral turnaround, you're gonna die immediately. So I had the feeling, I was like, oh, he got it. And now he's gonna turn around a little bit and be a better person, or try to be a better person. But nope, he's gonna die because he turned over a moral leaf. So bye-bye, Sebastian.
Does this mean that Rachel is attracted to him now?
Bye-bye, little Sebastian.
Oh, no.
I have a feeling not, given what she said earlier.
Oh, no.
But, yeah.
You're
oh, man.
15,000 candles in the wind.
You know...
Yes.
But I challenge anybody to not give Sebastian the slack that we all gave Negan. It's really hard to compare the two because Negan's intentions had the kernel of trying to help people. The kernel of trying to help people. Sebastian was only in it for himself. He didn't have the swagger, so he said, fuck it. I'll just be what people expect me to be. or at least my mother. Because if my mother sees me this way, of course, everyone sees me. He says it in his speech. He says, I know you don't think highly of me. I know I have a lot to make up for. Meaning he doesn't know that really. But like after everything that's happened now, at least, that's what makes this really a little like sad. And I love the complexity that they brought in here, that he could have leaned full in the whole time, but they had these glimmers. Every moment with he and Max was a glimmer. Oddly enough, with he and Max, the person that probably hates him the most out of everybody is where you see these glimmers of humanity. Him being drunk just before the news dropped. That moment where you're like, well, what else is there? Fuck it. Everybody hates me. My mom hates me. What else is there for me to do? And then the news comes out and it's just like he has to go into hiding. I mean, well done, The Walking Dead, and well done, Teo Rapp-Olsson. He smuggled in a little of that getting you to think twice, enough to be like, let's talk about this. There is a Dave Reacts. I don't know if I'm going to release it, but I literally clapped at the end of his death. I'm like, you had a soliloquy moment. You had a moment with Max. You had this moment with the public, and you had a shitbag moment where you're like, you fucking bitch.
That's great.
Which, that's complexity. There's a lot. It's not a one note thing. And I enjoyed it. And I felt like heartened by that. He got these moments to flex a little bit, to show the different petals of his flower, his acting flower.
More than just this fucking shithead.
Yeah.
It was very satisfying to see him die on one level, but it was also satisfying to see him not go into the night quietly in his own way, in his own special, not one note way. According to the writers, it was only going to ever end up being that way. But he smuggled in like, I'm not going to go without getting you to think a little bit about this character and what it means for him to die the way he did. What he could have been that was smuggled too soon. He was snuffed out too soon. We give Negan so much rope. Did we not leave any for anybody else to have a redemption? I don't know. What does it say about us that we relish in his death? I don't know.
The cinematography was spot on, especially the shot of the overhead of Mercer and Rosita and the other Jeeps. And as they left, went the other way, and it showed the herd splitting into and following them, like that fucking shot was awesome.
It was beautiful. And there was something really special about that whole interaction. Angela Kang touched on it in the Episoder Insider. So where she said Mercer can obviously trust Rosita, and that was very clear. But I just loved that interaction between the two of them, and how Rosita was so honest in that. This I'm fine with. That in there, no. That makes sense, right? She was out in it for so long. It's the human drama that becomes the burden.
Difficult, yeah.
So I really
Which is
like
why
that.
she and Gabriel work so fucking well. I've always contended this. Like, Gabriel obviously has the animal in him, right? They had that part of him that needs to come out to protect the people he loves, but he has a better grasp at separating the two. Rosita, it does, and this is what I've said. I knew this is one of the things I definitely wanted to say when we came back, is that the sad part about Rosita as a character is that there were so many interesting opportunities to flesh out her character, to give her a little bit more backstory here, or to talk about life on the road with Abraham and Eugene here, or her life before, which there were some things that were mentioned, mentions of family, etc. There were opportunities here to say more. This was what I wanted. That little bit of like, I'm better out here, and I know it. This is what I'm good at. In here, I can't solve what's in here. This is bigger than me, and it's not what I'm good at. I know where I'm useful, and I know where I'm not useful. I know what I feel I need to not do, because I'm not getting involved in this shit. So I like that.
Yeah.
I like that we get more out of her, and I hope that we get more out of her.
The special effects were killer too. In the body ripping scene. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
It was sick. I loved it. It was so good. There's just something to be said about practical effects that just cannot be replicated by CGI.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Just not there.
Even like the dummy of the Commonwealth soldier's head in one of the shots just after it was ripped apart the first time, when Negan comes out with his whisper mask and stabs the guy, blah, blah, blah. Like just the scene after that where you see the Commonwealth soldier's head on the side, and I may include a screenshot here, but like with the eyes out, and it's just so good. It's so good to get so many of those shots in these episodes.
They've found a really good blend of using using CGI when it's easy and when it fits, and the practical, which is obviously what Nicotero's really great at, especially as someone who's like really a horror fan, like really deep down a horror fan.
We fed, we ate well
It was great.
these episodes. Speaking of special effects, though, or sorry, cinematography in specific, one of the shots I really adored most was of the church when Gabriel does his last sermon. Like that one shot of him looking at Rosita with the candle in front of him and the couple of candles in back of him. He really lined up the moment and really accentuated what everybody has been saying throughout this entire episode. But like what he specifically said, I was on the brink. Think back to 11B where he's facing off against the Reaper Preacher. That was his, like, the moment where he could have jumped into the abyss. Like he was talking about, like, this is what we do for whom we do it for. And the Reaper Preacher says, I can be with you, blah, blah, blah. I can just take my hand. And he doesn't. And he rips into him. He's be like, it just takes him down. Mencia, right? Mm-hmm. Was his name?
Yeah.
Father Mencia, right? And he takes him down anyway. And what he's describing is, from that point on, my parishioners, I gave to them, but that was me, in a way, faking it till I made it. And they brought me back from where I was. And they gave me so much before they gave me so much. Like that little line at the end of season 8, when his fever broke and he figured his eye was blind. That was a very touching scene. But in it, there were 2 little bits of Bible study from both Old Testament and New Testament. One of which was obviously the sign before the church, which was from Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit. And it talks about each individual one. So he says, let me just say the whole thing. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. And it wrote in big letters, none of these are present in Maxine right now. Just because I thought the big get with this whole thing was patience. And then from that part, I kind of looked at all the other ones. Because one of the big things when I read up on this, and this is on bookdown.org/Kevin Morales 2114, he talks about the fruit of the Spirit. Let's go through each one of them because each one is telling. Love in this context means self-sacrificial love, devotion. Joy is, according to MacArthur, joy is the happiness produced by the divine, the unchanging nature of the promises of God, etc. Peace is the calm feeling we experience when God, by his grace, calls us his family. Religion is the only thing that can give this to you. It's a gift you give yourself, essentially. Patience, long-suffering patience, is defined the ability and willingness to endure painful, irritating, quote-unquote, circumstances. Max. And maybe she ran out of patience. Fine, whatever. Kindness refers to the tenderness manifested in someone when he or she treats others with respect and consideration. So it's like not just thinking of yourself. And sure, you can apply that to Max, and she's thinking of other people, but maybe she's also thinking a little bit about herself and her impatience and wanting things to die. Sorry, I keep bringing it back to her because it's a good foil for this. Because it's also a good foil for the people that he claims helped him. He's using these words as his last sermon, or at least the words that were on the board. Goodness refers to excellence and character shown through means of work and kindness. And faithfulness refers to being loyal and trustworthy, mentioning the book of Job also. He wants us to show the faithfulness exemplifies in Scripture, since this is his distinguishing trait of those who belong to Jesus. Gentleness. That means we show tenderness and consideration for others, also being submissive to God, seeking no revenge. So gentleness, avoiding seeking revenge. You can't smuggle in revenge to your cause for peace or your cause for justice, which clearly, had she listened to what he said, she may have thought maybe with gentleness, Eugene, don't push the button. Maybe there's something there that we can work with. Nope. Fuck that bitch. He's never going to see justice. Bye. And then there's self-control. That was the clincher. Yep. I was like, this means we must not follow after impulses or unholy desires. We must stay sober at all times. Well, I don't know if I believe that, but when you take all of these attributes that are on the board in the sign in front of the church, and so you put them all together, let's just take all the little bits and look at it from a distance. And the show is trying to tell us something that maybe on an individual level, but maybe also on a group level, that when we approach these situations, it's not always going to be, fuck you, I have a gun out there. It's my hunger versus your food and who's going to win. We're in the Commonwealth now. There are good people here. There are people that you need to consider other than the principle of justice, let's say. And maybe there's another way of going about this. I don't know. But there is at least a nugget where you can think and transpose some of this stuff to what's happening in this episode. I don't know how much of it we can. Like, I'm not claiming that this is the answer, but what I am saying is that it does make you think.
What was the other portion?
Well, the thing he actually says as his last sermon is from the Old Testament, and that's from Dvarim, which is Deuteronomy. It's 31:5-6. You shall do to them according to the whole commandment that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes to you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Now, bringing it back to my Bible class, the Lord says this at a time where the Jews are taking the census. They're taking account of all the tribes. Now, when they do this, they all gather together so that their numbers in each tribe can be counted. There's a significance in that don't come to me just showing up. Come to me affirming that you are keeping my commandments. And in you keeping my commandments, you've already done the job of forsaking idols, idolatry. You're already on the path of being united. When you come together in common cause, let's say for me, you're already united in something, in an idea that is me, which could mean a lot of things. But the fact that you do that in service of me means that you forsake already some pretty big ticket shitty things, and that you are together united under me. You are united as a whole people. Though we are counting you as individuals, we are also counting you as one.
It makes sense. There's a correlation between those two. If you're united with God, you reap the fruit of the Spirit. So it makes sense. From a theological, like, I'm giving a sermon standpoint, it makes sense.
That Gaby ain't no slouch. And they've done this time after time. They love the marriage of the walls of Jericho, which clearly is Old Testament. It's the prophets. The marriage of Old Testament with New Testament. There's the marriage of the old world, within which we were living, that was harsh, like the Old Testament. And then the new world of the New Testament, where, okay, well, we're moving in a different direction. Let's talk about kindness and forgiveness and devotion and the benefits of devotion. Things may be good. Don't forget that when things are good, to think of me, or else the things that are good taste like ash in your mouth, that sort of thing, So you can't always think of me when things are good or bad. You have to think of me when things are good. This is what we talked about in 11b.
Well, and the concept of treating others, it's the golden rule, right? Like, love others as I have loved you it's
a Talmudic. There's a very famous story in the Talmud about a non-believer coming up to Rabbi Hillel, and he says, "Come on, Rabbi, teach me the whole Torah standing on one foot." And he says, "All right, golden rule. Do unto others as you would do you know what I mean." I feel like Joe Biden right now. I feel do unto others that which you would not want done to you. So do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. From there, that's where you learn everything else. But this is the core of it. Start from there, work your way up. I also took the whole census taking united under one cause, under a principle, to also take the moment, like as we have been doing this episode, of looking, yes, we can look at Sebastian, but we can also look at Max. Yes, we can look at Max and judge her based on the fruits. But we can also look at this united under one banner as Pamela. Like you said, Bridget, I do not discount what you've said because I've thought it. It could be a commentary on Pamela Milton. What was this supposed to be about, Pamela? Is this about, like what Mercer was saying, I am here to protect the Commonwealth, not just you? Or is it about just you?
I think arguably in her mind, she is the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, yeah. Right. So where did it get away from you? When did this become about helping people and Founders Day? The words that President Milton says, he says, today's a day of remembrance for all those who died in the founding of this Commonwealth, the census almost. Their courage and grit fortify our walls, protecting our families, the future, and America itself. But when did that stop being the reason that we celebrate this day? She confused it. It was all about celebrating her dad.
To be fair, he's a politician, so was that ever really the case? Sure, that was the pretense in which he presented, that he presented to the people, but we could argue that he's a scumbag too. And
it may well be. Yeah. It may well be. She even mentions it in one of the episodes. I think it was 18. My father was like that. That they needed her brother was
to sow their wild oats before they would, but by that be a shitbag apparently for a really long time.
Mavericks or whatever. Yeah. And we can make that commentary about even the greatest people that we've ever known in politics, in the history of politics. As far as textbooks can tell us, they've all in one sense been fallible.
Well, yeah.
But what does that matter? Going back to the passage in Deuteronomy, we all have our foibles, but as long as we still believe in the ideal, we can be faulted for making mistakes as long as we are all united under a specific ideal. Whether or not we believe in that ideal wholeheartedly, we at least do the ideal. But the second we stop thinking about that ideal as something that is even real, sometimes we don't even believe the thing that we believe in, but we lean into it because what else is there? And sometimes that's okay. Because we've said this on the show many times before, the bills get paid, people get fed, people can exist, and maybe things can get better if we lean into a promise or an ideal or a system based on that ideal. And maybe politicians from time immemorial will say the things that need to be said in order to keep that system running. But it's the idea that keeps us going. We don't believe in those people. We believe in the ideals. People just get in the way sometimes. But the ideal persists. But the second that Pamela makes it about her, and that becomes apparent, and it feels like it's becoming apparent in the next episode, because somebody has to pay for Sebastian's death. Not Sebastian, who was trying to throw Maxine on that walker, which, in case you had any misgivings about Sebastian like I almost did, I was like, okay, well, I guess he can die now, because I guess I can be okay with that. Because that was like, you bitch, wasn't enough. Oh, I have this great idea that people on this show have done in time immemorial. Like, let's Otis this bitch. Like, nope. Psych. Aiden's take number 2.
Hey guys, this is my take for 11:18. So for this, I want to ask you what your thoughts were on the scene where Lance Hornsby basically threatens Pamela, saying very powerful allies are going to be upset. Upon my first watch, I didn't think anything of it. Second watch, I was like, he specifically used the word powerful. Could this be a way to bring in Warrant Officer Jada Stokes? I think that would be a cool way to tie in the series, because I think we're all focused on like spin-off territory now, but for fans who come to this universe later on and just watch The Walking Dead before they even know it has spin-offs, that'll be a very big plot hole to never see Jadis and Rick again. So could they bring her back as a way to finish up The Walking Dead story, just as a wink wink nudge nudge, hey, there is more to this story that maybe fans can then look into afterwards, instead of it just feeling like those two characters just left and never came back to the show.
I know Sharon has a lot to say about that.
I mean, I think Jadis should come back and live with Rick before the end of the series.
Well, that'll ruin everything for us. Oh, no more Walking Dead fans. Except for Sharon, I guess.
I didn't think about that, but I suppose it could be the CRM that are the powerful friends. But it could also have something to do with Primrose and that group that was in Ohio when the world went down, blah, 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 that I've theorized maybe is the start of the Commonwealth. Maybe it's something separate, and that's the powerful allies they're talking about.
I thought it was in reference to the heroine.
Yeah, but I wouldn't really qualify that guy as being a powerful ally or a person.
But I don't think he said powerful, though.
No, he didn't. I wanted to correct Aiden on that. Yeah, it wasn't powerful, but he said
I mean, I get where he got that from, because like that, I think it was easy to read that, but that was something that she had become reliant on. That's what it made me feel like it was. And so that's why I kind of assumed it was. But also, plus, like, why did they insert that into the story if we're never going to see it again? It plays again. It has to. If it doesn't, it's like really weird.
But it also goes to why was Lance shipping off weapons to whom and where? We never really got the answer to that.
Yeah.
Why his caravans got attacked by Leah? What was all that for?
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see, like, how all that plays out.
Lance has like his own like Nicaragua Contra thing where he's trading weapons, the drugs for the weapons, and then sending the weapons to rebels or something like that.
I mean, maybe.
But that's sort of what I was thinking. Yeah. Like he was prepping for a takeover. He was going to find a reason, and he found that reason in Sebastian, and he planted all the evidence that he needed to Connie. Clearly, that was Lance, right? Well, we still don't know, technically.
I feel like it was
with all the names and decoding the things.
That's why he's also mad that Hilltop, Alexandria, and Oceanside turned against him, because like they're such capable fighters. And I think he realizes that in knowing the people that came from that area, like these people are all very capable. So they would be good people to have on my side should I choose to overthrow the current government.
I mean, talk about hiding in plain sight. That's probably why they wanted Lance, or that's why Lance wanted those communities to be able to be yet another alliance. And maybe that's the reason. And it's pretty smart. If you bring in all these alliances, you can either pull them all together, give them a promise of trade, and have some people stay, some people representatives go to the Commonwealth, or if need be, I can play them against each other, because if one tries to take over what I've got going, I have the option of playing all these people against each other. But either way, I find a reason to get in. I take over the communities, not by force, but by persuasion, and then say, hey, and I've brought in all these wonderful communities to help keep the Commonwealth alive. They believe in the promise too. Yeah. Could this evolve? Could this be the CRM? Could be. But could this be like other communities, was it fingers in other pies, that sort of thing? Could this be that too, that we don't even know of?
Mayhaps.
Anything's possible. And also, I know that there have been many articles coming out lately spoiling the end, or like threatening to spoil the end. I feel like somebody had mentioned a time jump that was going to happen in this final 8, I suppose. So anything is possible, right?
Well, yeah. I don't really read too much into that stuff though either.
Yeah, I've been trying to avoid it myself. So first of all, thank you for joining us in this doubleheader. We could only do so much. We can't always talk about everything. We can't always link simple things like Jerry running away from Calhoun and Sheila to anything great. It was nice to watch. A lot of 17 was like that, by the way.
Was that Scott who helped block the picket?
No, not Kenrick. It was
okay.
Jimmy McAfee was one of them.
Okay.
One of the background actors.
As they went by, I was like, wait, I couldn't see that guy's face. He's tall. Was that Scott?
Well, and another one of the background actors, Mario, he's kind of TWD family, but he also got a background acting part. So there's a lot of people from the TWD family who are in the background who helped Jerry out. They did like this human blockade and blocked Calhoun and Sheila. So that's cool. But it's not much meat to really be able to dig into, which was a lot of 11-17. But these 2 episodes do play very well together. I'm glad we got to cover them together, because there wasn't much to say for the first one, but a lot to say about the second one and how our gang feels about having to leave or having to stay and fix things. So if you like what you heard, head over to ratethispodcast.com/squawkingdead. Leave us 5 stars and eggplant. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you didn't like. Let us know what we forgot. There's going to be a lot of that. But let us know after every episode. We will post your feedback to our social media. And if you really like what we're doing and you want to be a part of how these episodes shake out, you want to know when we record, you want to know when our unedited episodes drop early so that you don't have to wait for the finished product and get all these fun little tidbits and not so fun little tidbits before, during, and after, well, why don't you create an account on both ko-fi.com and patreon.com and just follow us on ko-fi.com/squawkingdead or patreon.com/squawkingdead. We don't post these things on social media. That's the only place we post this information. But if you like what we're doing, you can tip us on ko-fi.com/squawkingdead for 30 days of supported back content, or you can join a membership tier on either Patreon or Ko-fi for as little as $1, by the way, on Ko-fi, and as little as $5 on Patreon. And the party just keeps going. Both have Discord access for you to enjoy. Like I said, somewhere in the middle of this podcast, Patreon has some really great perks should you decide to join us on Patreon. If you've been holding back before, head over to patreon.com/squawkingdead. Take a look at what we have to offer and think about joining our journey there at the very least. So, without further ado, I've been your host, David Cameo, and I was joined by Cosmon09, Rachel Burt, who had to leave early, unfortunately, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster. That's PONKYBRUISETER. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening and watching and enjoying what we have to offer. I humbly invite you to join us next time, where we'll be talking about 11-19, which will be a while, but we'll see you later. Take care. We'll at least have 1 episode to do, and we'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Love you guys. Mitchell.